I'm keeping you all in suspense. Thank you guys for coming today. It's been a wonderful evening yesterday. We've got an exciting day planned for you today. I am thrilled to be able to introduce one of my friends and colleagues, Gustavo Razzetti. Gustavo is coming to us from Lapis, a Leo Burnett company based in Chicago. Gustavo works with Fortune 500 companies, leading organizations all the way to startups throughout the globe, working on cultural transformation. One thing, when we had talked about this topic of really kind of getting to action, of course I thought about Gustavo as a thought leader and a partner in many different projects. If I know anything about Gustavo, it's he is constantly reinventing not only himself, but the companies that he works with. When I think of a bias towards action, I always go to Gustavo. He's adapting and leading change and is always inspiring. His background is in strategic planning, digital, multicultural, innovation, a little bit of everything in a holistic way to bring it all together. Please join me in welcoming Gustavo.
My career basically is helping companies kind of adapt and lead and thrive in change, which is a very challenging stuff, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm also working on a project I share with him. This is the first time I've been sharing this in smaller group, and this is the first time I share with a large group as this, that I'm launching in 4 weeks from now, a change leadership school out of Chicago. And basically, it's all combining all my experience working with different kind of clients, but also running organizations, and how to help teams and companies adapt and thrive in change. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you, all of you guys, to stand up. I know it's early in the morning, so let's move a little bit. I want to pay full attention. And let's start stretching a little bit. Whatever you want to do, stretch your arms, whatever. Make sure you don't hit anyone, okay? Like, feel free. So normally, I mean, you guys think a lot of the body when it comes to ergonomics, when you're designing furniture, but most of the time we forget about our bodies and take care of our bodies when it comes to the workplace, right? You can sit down now, thank you. And the same way, yesterday a lot of people were talking, okay, I like running, or I used to run, or no, I'm not running that anymore. We need to prepare our bodies for exercise. Stretching is not only good in terms of make us more flexible and avoid getting injured, but also when you stretch, you warm your body. So you're ready, everything's sending the right signals that you're ready to jump and take the leap and hopefully go for it. So that's the same thinking that I have when it comes to change. People talk a lot about change. Today, change is not optional. We know that the society, technology, everything is happening at such a fast pace that no one anticipated. And so it's no longer an option, and we need to prepare for that. A lot of companies are investing, like you, a lot of money in putting together new systems, new software, new processes, new products, etc. But many times we forget that if we don't prepare the culture to absorb those new things, it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I see a lot of companies that have this same issue with innovation, that they try to scale solutions and they don't succeed, basically because their own organization, their own culture, the people, which is our more important asset, doesn't follow. Okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can, as an organization, as a team, prepare and stretch ourselves, not just for physical activity, but also for change. So talking about that, I have an obsession with change because I like changing since I was really young and a kid too. But I did a little bit of digging, so I went to the internet. I started doing some Google search to see exactly what is. Am I the only one obsessed about change? It's something that really gravitates with a larger population. And as you can see, we know that everyone goes to internet because they like to see those cat videos and little dogs and all that stuff. So pets is something that everyone loves. But when you see this, the blue line, it's basically change. So we see that, yeah, pets are really important, but through 2011, through almost end of 2016, basically change matters much more. And I did this in the US also last year, and we know that we're going through that very tense moment, the election, of course, and even that thing that was really covering everyone's attention couldn't beat change. So I would say that change is the thing that matters the most. Until I run another analysis, of course, change is number one, second only to sex. And that's, we're human, right? So today, regardless of that, we know that change is something really, really important for us. So when I work with the different clients and with managing directors, CEOs, or team leaders, there are some recurring themes when it comes to what are the tensions related to change and how they manifest in their own organizations. So I'm going to put this in a form of a question. I'm not expecting you to answer now, but think about it if it resonates with you. The first thing is like, do you see change as something threatening, something that is kind of this huge wave that's going to get you that you cannot control? Do you think that your team or your organization probably is moving a little bit slower or too slow comparing to your expectation in terms of adoption, in terms of adapting, in terms of doing things or achieving the objectives as you wish they would? Are you one of those, like we know we have this admiration for startups, entrepreneurs, successful people, everyone, no? But sometimes that admiration doesn't turn into action, like you were talking at the very beginning of this conference. So we like to be like them, but then when it comes to ourselves, we say, oh, yeah, I'm not ready for that. That's not for me, right? And the other thing is like, does your team struggle? And I talk to team, you can also think about your family, your friends, whatever group that you're doing stuff, not just your team as steel case. Do they struggle to embrace change? And that basically, it's like one thing that I'm going to talk today, it's how we need to embrace a change mindset. No, what I say, like most of the time, organizations and team are in a stuck mindset. And stuck doesn't mean that you're not doing stuff, but you're not flexible. You're not stretching as much as you can. So the idea is how can you move to the next level and adopt that stretch mindset. Okay? So we're going to go into it, but once again, I'm going to ask you to do an exercise. This is very simple. Hopefully no one dies in the, in the process. This is how it goes. I'm going to count out to 3, right? And when I say that, you're going to take a deep breath. You're going to hold your breath and raise your hand until you cannot hold your breath anymore, and then you're going to lower your hand until the last man or last woman standing, okay? So everyone clear? I'm going to count down to 3. Take a deep breath, hold your breath as much as you can, okay? Make sure that you don't get too red. And then when you cannot keep your breath any longer, lower your hand. Ready? For those that are watching us through the camera too, hopefully you can do the exercise. And you can maybe write there on the screen, like when you're done, so we know that you're giving up, okay? So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. And no cheating. Okay. No, this is a record. I don't know. I think we're going to have to continue this presentation tomorrow. Wow. So good job, guys. So let me ask you around here. Everyone alive? Everyone still here? Okay. How did it feel when you were holding your breath?
I said to Laurence before, just don't pass out on me.
Where was that?
Right before, we need each other, so we didn't go for the big hug. But it feels, you really, I think for me to really focus on it, I had to close my eyes and
Yeah.
really kind of not be distracted by the room and focus on being present with myself.
And when you're getting closer to lower your hand, how do you feel?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah? Why?
I think you accept defeat that you can't do it any longer.
You accept defeat. Okay, that's good. So thank you guys for participating. But the most important thing about this exercise not only is to keep you like entertained, but most importantly, it's to understand that change, as I mentioned before, is something you cannot resist. It's like holding your breath. There's so much you can do until some point, unless you want to die, or you need to adapt to it. So that's the most important thing that we need to take as a lesson today. So this is, I'm not going to get into very detail, but this is for you to understand what it looks like, this change mindset, no? The most important thing is it becomes with self-awareness and let go of what I call the drama, the mimi drama. No? Normally we complain about things that are out of our control, and it's easy to blame our boss, our partner, our competition, the salespeople, the budget, whatever, the weather, instead of realizing, okay, what can we do? And that takes us to the next level, which is ownership. It's about taking action, not talking about or using excuses to get out of our way. Then the most important superpower that we have, which is constraints, the limitation that normally we tend to complain about what we don't have, but actually, and I'm going to address that later, how can we turn those into a weapon that can help us succeed? And last but not least, moving into a more experimental mindset, which is about doing versus overthinking or analyzing things too much. So I'm going to get first into the self-awareness. I'm going to show a video for a minute or two, okay?
Guys, my name is Nick Vujicic. I was born in Australia in 1982, moved from Australia to California in the year 2006. And my life story, I'm just thankful that people have seen my life on some sort of level, whether it's just YouTube videos or seeing pictures of a limbless guy smile. People always ask me, what happened to you and how did you overcome what you've been through. The title of the message that I've been given is Transforming the Walls into Doors. When I speak corporately, the line that I like to use is changing obstacles into opportunities. You know the people that you have in your life who, no matter how good of a day you're having, they'll bring you down. Or no matter how bad of a day you're having, they'll bring you even lower. You know what I'm talking about? Think of the 3 biggest discouragers in your life. They're not your biggest discouragers. You are. Today, I still have no arms, no legs. But everything's changed. Everything. I don't have any walls. My book's called Life Without Limits. And what will be, will be. I've acted in a short film, 30 awards. I got Best Actor in a Short Film. I've done my own music video. I've written 2 books. First book, 30 languages, 800,000 copies. I'm 29, and we know 1 billion people know who I am. Not to bring up my pride or my name or my status. Trust me, I'm just like you. But I hope you are inspired to know that if I can dream big, then so can you.
So there's nothing I can add to that, but the most important thing is this is not about feeling pity about someone that was born without arms and legs, but actually sometimes we have self-pity because we miss our train, because we have this minor issue that upset us. And once again, there are people out there that have much more problems than we do. They're successful. There's no excuse for us to not achieve what we want to achieve except ourselves. And that takes us to the next level, which is taking ownership. And many times when we talk about change, we think of change as a noun. And I'm not playing here with words, the difference between using change as a noun or as a verb. But when you think of change as a noun, it's kind of an object, something that is external to you, something that you cannot control. Now you say, well, a change in the weather. The president announces important changes to the tax system. There was no change in the patient's condition, and so on and so forth. So basically we're seeing like it's something that's happening and we're just getting the news. And what's up? But this is a good exercise that I like to practice. I like to encourage you guys to practice, which is try to start thinking of change as a verb, something that you can own, something that you can say, okay, I'm going to do something about it, and you're going to see how things change when you see change as a verb. Like the Maya Angelou said, if you don't like something, change it. and if you can, change your attitude. So basically, the way we see reality is more important than reality itself. It's our own mindset. The way we filter things, the glasses that we use, the lenses that we use, determines the outcome and how we're going to deal with our context and our everyday and our job, of course. So basically, when you see change as a verb, you're going to see how your relationship with change starts changing. No, it's like, I'm going to change my diet. I'm changing my relationship. I'm going to change jobs. I'm changing my look. I'm going to change my priorities. So basically, you start taking ownership. It's about you and not something else or someone else determining or defining who you are, what's going to happen, and who you're going to become. Okay, this takes us then to the next level, which is how to let go of excuses. And we know that excuses, there are many. Now you can think about what are the most common excuses that you normally use. But we know that excuses are BS, right? They're not real things. They're just things that we put on the way not to take ownership and really be accountable of our own actions. And one of the most recurring excuses I hear every time I'm working with different teams and they're having troubles, they cannot accomplish their objectives, whatever, it's, I'm busy. I have so much work. I never have enough time. And basically, this is what I call the busyness syndrome. It's a state of mind that basically either it takes over our life or we control it. So it's our choice. Because if we become busy and we turn this notion of I'm busy, I cannot do it, whatever, then you're not going to realize that you're going to start using that over and over and over. And your friends are going to call you to invite you to their house and you're going to be busy. You're running, a spirit is calling you, let's go back and run again. And you're going to say, I'm busy. Your boss is going to ask you to take more responsibility. You're going to say you're busy, and so on and so forth. The important thing about time, and this is something that, because normally we say, I don't have time. We never have time. Time is not something that we have. It's not an asset. Time is something that we decide to. It's a prioritization. So basically, we make time. It's our call. We can say what are the things that I want to put time behind it, what are the things that matter to me, what are my priorities, and then decide to allocate time for that. I mean, I'm going to mention this later too, but Lee Iacocca was, the CEO of Chrysler. He was a super busy guy running a multi-billion-dollar company, but he always attended when his girl was swimming, she was competing, and she never missed any competition. And I say, how can a guy like that? So the journalists, of course, were curious and say, hey, how can you do it? And he said, first of all, it matters to her because I'm her dad, so I need to be present. But then what I do is I put it on my calendar. It sounds stupid, obvious, but the guy blocked his calendar. So the moment you block that time is something that you're making for what's important to you. Some thoughts to keep your mind fresh, and you can apply this to anything, not just to time, no? But are you using the notion of busyness as an excuse? So think about it, write down, and maybe in the future after this, you can, when you have a coffee on the break, think about how you normally use busyness as an excuse to get out of things. The other thing normally that I see when people are busy or they say they're too busy is because they don't really understand what their priorities are. So basically, when you don't know what to say no to, is that when you start getting busy because you accept every invite, you accept every project, you go to everywhere. We have an issue in the corporation world, which is people feel that if they're not participating in meetings, that they're missing out. They're going to be left out. They're not important, whatever, when actually it's completely the same. It's the opposite. It's the fewer meetings you attend, the more important and more focused you're going to be. So that's something that it's hard to change in the mindset, but it's important that we realize. And the last thing is, are you saying no with conviction? If you have clear priorities, what you need to do is say no. And it's hard to tell a colleague that you're not going to join his meeting or you're not going to give him a hand on his project, whatever. But it's being realistic with you and the other people that depend on you because you're already committed to something else that you're going to be able to deliver instead of you taking more and more stuff and then no one gets what they expected from you. So excuses. The other thing is, as I mentioned, the notion of turning constraints into a superpower. And constraint can be physical limitations that we talk about the guy early on the video. It can be time. Also, it can be money, it can be resources, whatever you have, whatever you're missing that's getting on your way to accomplish what you want as an individual or as a team, right? And let's take Ray Charles for a second. He lost his vision when he was 7, right? So imagine how hard, because if you're born blind, which is very hard, at least that's your reality. You don't know better. But this guy lost his sight when he was like a kid. in the middle of this joyful whatever. So it was really hard for him to adapt. But still, he became a famous and very successful songwriter, musician, right? So, and composer as well. So this guy basically went through that stuff. And the most important thing is that he was able to rewire his brain. And what I mean with this is like, every time we have something that is not working, there's a lot of scientific theory that shows that when there's something in your body, in your mind, or whatever that's not working properly, your body is going to adjust and something else is going to become stronger. That's the nature, both from a physical, from a brain perspective. So it's important every time we're facing, okay, I'm not good at, because we're very good as human beings to say, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at painting, I cannot draw, like saying no to things. Well, what are you really good at? And how can you turn that thing that is actually limitation to something really powerful on some other area and discover what's actually your superpower, right? But also, another way to turn constraints into a weapon, it's learn how to reframe problems, right? Normally we get stuck because every company wants to grow faster than the rest. They want to be number one. They want to be we all have the same goals. But when we get stuck in the goals, we lose perspective of actually how we're going to get there, which is more important because the goals are a consequence of our well-defined strategy. And this is the case of how Ori turned into winning in the 24-hour Le Mans race like 4, even 5 years in a row. And it was basically they were having a hard time because their cars weren't and their technology was a little bit behind other car manufacturers, right? So they were saying, okay, we need to build the faster car, we need to build the fastest car, and they couldn't make it. So at one point, the chief engineer reframed the problem and said, okay, we're not going to be the fastest car. So he said, how can we beat and how can we win Le Mans without being the fastest car, right? Which sounds counterintuitive. But then the guys started investigating whatever, and they learned that actually if they could reduce the number of pit stops that the cars do, basically they were going to save a lot of time that was even more effective than being faster because there's so much that you can make a car faster than the rest. And that's what they did. They did a car that was more fuel efficient and had to stop less time, fewer times, and they win Le Mans 4 years in a row. So it's reframing that versus saying, we're not the fastest, and then you just quit. Last but not least, I want to talk about, we talk about stretch, and stretch, I mentioned this physical thing, but it's also how you stretch out of your comfort zone. We don't like to do that as human beings because we're comfortable, we know who we are, and we feel secure being the person that people are going to expect and playing the roles that we're normally expecting, no? So it's hard, but it's necessary for us every day to experiment with a different ourselves, to try new things, to go beyond that route. There's another thing I was talking yesterday to a lot of people here, and they were talking about, okay, prototyping and playing and work seems that are not connected. And I say, like, we live in a world, I mean, people talk about this tension between work and personal life, the balance. And I say, there's no balance. Forget about it. You're a human being. So those things are part of who you are. We need to stop building walls between our personal life and our professional life because that's hurting. We need to bring back our soul to work and bring the fun to work. People are having fun during the breaks and then they get into a meeting and they change their mind and then the creativity, boom, plummets. Why? I'm going to tell you, this is a small experiment I did at a company recently, which we decided to create a recess time in our organization, which is a little bit crazy because kids have recess at school. But we say, why don't we adults have recess? Because we need to stop. Our brain is like a muscle. You cannot keep it working 24 hours non-stop because it's going to collapse. Actually, the most creative people, the most successful people have breaks. They have 2-3 hours of deep work. They stop and then they go back. And we started with this, and people at the very beginning, they were really crazy, like say, hi, we're going to have break. Actually, we had a bell, so it was to make it like school, and we have also snacks. Basically, the idea was to provide, like Pavlovian way, all the stimulus to make it look like, okay, connect to that mindset when you go to school that you're waiting for the bell to ring, and boom, release all your energy and have fun, whatever. It's important, like how absenteeism and how productivity and whatever raised in less than 3 months, just because we added 2 breaks and snacks and games for people to play. So we need to stop thinking like playing is for kids and it's at home and work is play is work and work is play. Okay? The other thing that's important in order to stretch yourself is getting lost No, and how to learn something. No, we don't learn when people like me come and talk to you. You're not going to learn today. You're going to learn when you do stuff, when you get lost. I remember I like to bike, and one of the things I normally do is I start biking like, I don't know, 20, 30 miles without a clear direction. I just bike. I want to clear my mind, and I feel like I have to turn to the left. I turn to the right. And then at some point, I don't know, whatever amount of miles. I don't know where I am, but it's really rewarding. But also I need to find my way back. And ideally without using the GPS, so it helps my brain a little bit like a challenge. But it's an important exercise when you don't have a plan, because we live in a society that we have GPS, Google Maps, everything's predetermined, that our brain is getting stupid. Mine for sure. So you need to push your brain, you need to exercise, and learning is like that. And also getting messy. We live in corporate America, we live in global corporations like yours, and what happens with people don't want to mess things up because you're going to look like, oh, the stupid in the room. But the only way you're going to disrupt your business, the only way you're going to go beyond your competition is by doing things in a different way. And I believe, and I can tell you, the initial steps are going to be messy. There's no structured plan. You always are studying case studies of what people did because they're telling the story in the nice way, but no one gets to success in a straight line. It's chaotic, it's messy, and the more messy it is because you're heading towards the right direction. This takes me to another stuff, and this is more to the leadership, to the managers of the world here too, which is we all like to encourage our teams to be more creative, to do things differently, to go beyond their own limitations, to experiment, whatever. But then we keep behaving as leaders the same way. And if you're a dad and you want your kids to experiment more, but you keep controlling them and you keep like making them, but you need to deliver yourselves tomorrow, whatever, how can you expect them to behave differently? So that's the most important lesson for leaders. It is, I mean, if you really want to build a culture of experimentation, you need to start experimenting with yourself. You need to let go. You need to let your team start doing things differently and give them the space and the room for them to experiment and try new things. And this combines basically what the notion of creating a culture of transparency, right? The idea, yes, I was seeing you have a screen that shows who's in the office and who left or whatever. I find it really interesting, but those things can have like two sides of that story. It could be really an organization that is super transparent and wants everyone to know what's going on, or it can be an organization that is, they're controlling me, so I've left the office, everyone knows where I am, whatever. I'm not saying you're doing that, but what I'm saying is like a transparency, it's a very delicate a tool. I mean, people want more and more transparency. Everyone wants to know what's going on, whatever. But the most important thing is they need to understand, a culture, a team, a group needs to understand what's behind that seek for transparency. Are you, as a company, as a team, are trying to control your people, or the transparency is more of a tool of, I trust you, go and do whatever. And that's something that's very important, the message, but also how you as a leader are willing to take some risk to show that, I mean, everyone's transparency matters. I remember like a year or so ago, we started with self-organization, holocracy. I don't know if you are familiar with it. And a company, which is basically a very disruptive way of organizing, and it's decentralizing decision-making and everything. It's very chaotic at first because it breaks all the typical managerial lines. And after 2 months of experimenting, we wanted to provide an update to the team, but we wanted the update not to come from managers, but to come from a regular guy to see how he was really feeling about it and share with the whole team in a setting like this. And one of the things that we decided is if we're going to show that we're really committed to this and it's about transparency, we're not going to check what he's going to say. So we're going to invite a guy to talk in front of the company. He's going to provide feedback on the most important project and most challenging project that we put in place, and he's going to say whatever he wants. And if he says that he doesn't like and the project is a failure, we have to fail. So when you take those risks in front of the people, you tend to show them that you're for real, that you really care about transparency, and you're giving that safe space for people to experiment. So it's very important that if you want your team to take risks, the first person that you need to take risk and jump is the leader. The notion of the leader is the one holding the chair. That's no longer, is the first jumping off the cliff. I know that for sure. So in a nutshell, hopefully I was able to provide some topics and insights for you to keep thinking about. Change is a very interesting topic, and we run a lot of workshops on this because for me, as I mentioned, it's a point that I'm really passionate about. But at the end of the day, regardless of whatever book, regardless of whatever TED Talk or whoever comes like me here to talk about change and whatever, at the end of the day, it's about you. So it's not the tools, it's not the context, not the motivation, it's your real drive. How bad you want what you want, no? So how far are you willing to take? How much are you going to sacrifice? How much are you willing to stretch out of your comfort zone to achieve what you want? And that willingness, that desire to achieve greater things is what separates regular guys from successful guys. Not talent, but determination. But also, as I mentioned before, the notion of prioritization. So if it matters to you, make it matter. Don't let anyone else determine what's your priority. Don't let anyone else determine how you're going to succeed or who you're going to become. Don't let anyone else determine your destiny. Hemingway, apologize for the language, but Hemingway, drunk, and he said that every first draft is always shift of everything, right? It's shit. It doesn't well, but you might say, because he's Hemingway, so he's cocky. He won the Nobel Prize, whatever, so he can say whatever. Well, he got to win the Nobel Prize because of his attitude. Why? Because he was very determined. The guy liked to party, so he wasn't perfect. He went at night, like when he was living in Cuba. So he had a very relaxed and liberal life. But in the morning, every time he woke up, he was committed to write every day. For him, writing was an everyday. He wouldn't go to bed or he wouldn't do anything else if he hadn't written at least X amount of words. And for him, it wasn't about the quality of the words. It was about the notion of exercising and writing like frenetic. And he kept track, very obsessive, the guy. Every day he was tracking how many words. He didn't have Microsoft Word to count his words, so he had to count it by hand to keep track of how many words he write. So basically, he had a method. And as I mentioned before, talent, it's important, right? But the most important thing is having discipline, having commitment, having this, I'm going to do it. And so it's important not to be defined by failure. No? Another great example, it's, I was saying Che Guevara, but Fidel Castro. No? Maybe it's not the typical example that we use in business school, and people are going to use Fidel Castro as the example of a leader. And actually, he wasn't a good leader. He was a very lucky guy, because even the revolution, he didn't win it, the most important battles, but that's a different conversation. But if you know about him, basically, everyone thinks of him as the guy who basically liberated Cuba and the great conqueror, whatever. But his whole career was full of failure. But the guy, you can see there's a very interesting documentary in Netflix about his life, which is, it seems like a joke. He started like a lawyer, right? And he was a complete failure because his clients didn't pay him. So he couldn't continue his lawyer because none of his clients paid him. So he had to quit being a lawyer. Then he wanted to start an attack to a fort in Cuba. It was supposed to be a surprise attack. And of course, everyone anticipated. He got in prison immediately in his first attempt to become a revolutionary. Luckily, he was married to the daughter of a politician, so he was released and let go. Then he tried his luck again in two revolutions, one in, I think, in Colombia and Peru, wherever, trying to join other, and one he was captured before he started fighting, and the second one in his first battle, boom, again, captured. Then he said, okay, I'm going to go back to Cuba because that's my destiny. He landed in Cuba, small army, he was again captured, not captured him, but 90% of his team was killed. He had to go to the jungle and live there until he could recruit another team and whatever. So his life was one failure after another, right? So if there's something we can learn from the guy, not just to choose the right cigars, right? But the guy really was determined. And that's the difference again between success and being part of being forgotten. So building on that, I want you to inspire to build a revolution, to start your own revolution. And when I say this, a lot of people say, what do you mean? Well, exactly that. You need to start a revolution. The only way that the world is going to change, that the organizations are going to change, if you start a revolution. You can start a revolution within your team, with the senior leadership, with your clients, with your vendors, with whoever. But you need to start shaking things up if you really want to take the game of your organization to the next level. Like Oscar Wilde said, no, you have to be yourself. Stop pleasing because, everyone else is taking already. So don't try to be Steve Jobs or any of those guys that they were trying to convince you to mimic. Be yourself. Be whoever you want to be as a leader, as a professional, as a person, and take that to the limit starting your revolution, challenging stuff, and make sure that you bring people that are like-minded, like you, that want to join the revolution and you want to start change and shake things up. That's part of my job. I didn't say that at the beginning, not to worry, but basically I encourage people to start revolution. That's part of my job description. To go into different organizations and help people, like how you're going to shake things up. The only things that change is going to happen if you're really challenging stuff, if you're creating some kind of tension, if you're going beyond what is expected and making people uncomfortable. If people are feeling uneasy regarding what you're doing, keep doing it because you're in the right direction. So hopefully you enjoy this and it helps you and you're not asleep after all the exercise. But the most important thing I want to keep in mind is, remember, the same way we stretch ourselves for exercise and we get ready and we warm up our bodies, we need to do that on a regular basis with our mind, with our mindset. If we want to be a person that thrives in change, we need to stretch for change, and hopefully you got something from that. Thank you.